Zira had always walked among the stars with a quiet certainty that she would never be beautiful. On her homeworld of Terevra, beauty was measured in luminescent scales, iridescent feathers, and wings that shimmered like the northern lights. Zira had none of that. Her skin was matte, a dull gray-green. Her hairless head glistened like polished stone under the light of the twin suns, and her limbs, long, slender, and slightly awkward, seemed ill-suited for elegance. As she moved through the bustling Terevran market, she tried to make herself small, blending into the crowd of dazzling beings whose appearances drew the gaze of every passerby. The scales on their necks flashed with pride. Their wings caught the sunlight in 1,000 colors. Zira felt invisible, and that was exactly what she wanted. But everything changed the day the humans arrived. The Terevran scholars had been observing humanity for decades, fascinated by their unpredictability and chaotic emotions. And now, after years of tentative diplomacy, the first human delegation had landed on Terevra. Zira had been assigned as a liaison, not because she was admired for her looks, but because she was meticulous, calm, and careful. She would be the one to guide the humans through the city, explain customs, and ensure no one accidentally offended anyone with clumsy gestures or idiotic questions. The first human she met was named Mara. She was small, only about 1.6 meters tall, with curly brown hair and warm brown eyes that somehow looked at Zira as though she were important. Zira had been warned to maintain professional distance. Humans are sensitive to appearances and tone, her supervisor had said. Be polite, be correct, but don't overshare. So Zira was polite. She offered a formal greeting in Terevran, inclining her head slightly, her matte gray-green skin reflecting the soft pink glow of the city lights. Mara smiled in return. You must be Zira, Mara said, her voice lilting with curiosity. I've heard so much about Terevra. And about you, Zira froze. About her? She had expected the humans to marvel at the city, the floating gardens, the spires of crystal that rose like jagged mountains in the sky. Not her. Yes, Zira replied cautiously. I am your liaison. I will show you the city and ensure your visit is pleasant. Mara tilted her head, studying her. You're different, she said finally, in that human way of making an observation that could either be insulting or complimenting, depending on the speaker. Zira stiffened. Different? She repeated. I am not like the others. Yes, Mara said softly, stepping closer. But in a good way. You're unique. I like that. Zira's internal systems emitted a low hum of confusion. This was not the reaction she had expected. On Terevra, being different often meant being overlooked or ridiculed. Yet here, a human was looking at her as though she were something to be appreciated, not pitied. The tour began. Zira led Mara through the city, explaining the history of the spire temples, the meaning of the floating gardens, and the science behind the luminescent rivers that wound through the streets. Zira spoke with practiced precision, her voice steady, but she noticed Mara's gaze never wavered from her face. Not in a judgmental way, but with genuine interest. At the Garden of Light, a place where bioluminescent flowers bloomed even in daylight, Mara knelt beside one of the glowing plants. It's beautiful, she said, but not as beautiful as... She paused, looking up at Zira with a shy smile. Not as beautiful as your skin under this light. It's calming somehow. Zira's processor, or the Terevran equivalent of one, spiked with confusion and something dangerously close to hope. I'm not sure how to respond to that, she admitted. She had never received a compliment from a Terevran, let alone a human. Then don't, Mara said simply. Just accept it. You're beautiful to me. That's all that matters. Zira felt a warmth she didn't understand. Humans often spoke in confusing ways, yet somehow Mara's words were direct, simple, honest. As the days passed, Zira found herself looking forward to Mara's presence more than she had anticipated. They visited the floating libraries where knowledge was etched into crystalline pillars that hovered in midair. Mara laughed when she accidentally touched one of the pillars and sent a minor shock of information through her fingers. Zira found herself smiling more freely than she had in centuries. One evening, after a long day of guided tours, Mara turned to Zira and asked, "Do you ever wonder what it's like to see yourself through someone else's eyes?" Zira considered the question. I do not think it would change anything. My reflection is clear in the waters of Terevra. I know what I am, Mara shook her head. I don't mean the reflection in the water. I mean how someone else sees you. I see strength and curiosity and beauty, and that's not the same as what you see in yourself. Zyra felt her heart, or the Terevran equivalent, skip a beat. She had spent her life hiding, believing she was unattractive, unremarkable. And yet, Mara looked at her as if she were luminous. The turning point came during the Festival of Stars, an event that occurred once every Terevran decade. The skies filled with radiant, hovering orbs that floated above the city, casting colors that danced across every scale, feather, and wing in sight. Zyra watched in awe, but this year she noticed Mara's gaze. It was fixed on her, not the spectacle. You're not invisible, Mara said quietly, standing beside her. You've never been invisible to me. Zyra felt tears, something she rarely experienced, welling in her eyes. She had always assumed that being different meant being unseen. Yet here was a human, someone from another world entirely, telling her that she was not only seen, but cherished. Why do you say these things? Zyra asked, her voice trembling. Because they're true, Mara said. She reached out, a small hand resting on Zyra's arm. You're amazing. And I hope you start seeing yourself that way too. The words sank into Zyra's mind like sunlight into frozen soil. She looked down at her hands, at her matte gray skin, the slender limbs she had always thought awkward, and for the first time, she saw possibility. Perhaps she had been wrong about herself all along. As the festival lights shimmered overhead, Zyra realized that beauty was not defined by scales or feathers or any of the traditional Terevran measures. It was defined by perception and by connection. And here was a human, small, fragile, and wondrously complex, who saw her as beautiful. In that moment, Zyra laughed, a pure, unrestrained sound that echoed across the city streets. Mara laughed with her, and for the first time, Zyra felt truly seen, truly human in her own way. The days turned into weeks, and the humans eventually prepared to leave Terevra. Zyra accompanied Mara to the landing platform, her usual poise returning, though her heart was heavier than it had been in centuries. Will I see you again? Mara asked, stepping into her ship. Zyra hesitated. I do not know, but I hope so. Mara smiled, leaning close to whisper something that made Zyra's circuits, or her heart, stutter.
You're more than beautiful.
You're unforgettable. And with that, the ship lifted off, disappearing into the starry void. Zyra watched until it vanished completely, and then she turned back to the city, to the floating gardens and glowing spires, and finally, to herself. For the first time, she did not see a dull, gray-green alien. She saw someone luminous, unique, and infinitely capable of being loved. Zyra smiled at her reflection in the water, and this time, she recognized the truth. She was beautiful. Not by Terevran standards, not by anyone else's standards, but in a way that truly mattered. And for the first time, she believed it.